Welcome to the PI Podcast, Political Insights for the Palaging Inis. I'm your host, Matt, and with me is my co-host, political scientist, meme lord, and upstart drag queen with the drag name Nora Horror, Forge.
Kasi na. Fair enough. Okay, you just threw it back at me. PI nyo, PI nating lahat. Forge at your service.
Yes, and this is a very special Halloween edition of the PI Podcast, where we're going to talk about scary films and what scares us. So, Borge, we've had Halloween episodes before, and but we never really dive deep into like what really scares us. So, Borge, what do you think scares you? Like, and that we're reflecting this in Halloween. Does anything scare you as someone who scares students? Or scares a lot of people?
This is one way to demystify. What scares me? My advisor.
Your advisor.
No,
yung mga prof mo.
My advisor is fine. It's my dissertation. Now, what are the things that scares me? Uncertainty would be there, and I think that's a natural thing. I think that's also part of the horror experience. Uncertainty would be there. What scares you?
Oddly enough, I'm actually very easy to scare. I mean, I get better at this, but anything that's gore or blood, like hindi ako nagdoktor kasi ayoko na sa dugo. So I'm if I'm not scared, I'm like grossed out. And so it's like anything with like body horror in particular. Like I remember actually even Akira, which is more action animated, but when he started, like he grew into a monster, like even like it's not Akira, the character, it's Tetsuo, who was also based on another body horror movie, Tetsuo, Japan, also from Japan, and he became from human to I think a robot or cyborg, so part man, part steel, and then to the point where he even had like a screwed, like a drill penis. It's like, whoa, what the hell? So, and there's of course, I think we remember anything with body horror in it. You remember like Cronenberg in particular. Like I remember watching that with a few friends in high school, and it's like, even like Cronenberg it was referenced in Rick and Morty. So anything that you see that it came from something human, but when you twist it and mutilate it, it kind of becomes scary because you know that your body can end up like that. So if you allow yourself to imagine that, that's scary for me. So I don't know. I mean, we're going to explore that today with our guest, particularly through horror movies. And of course, everyone, even our listeners, I'm sure, will be watching scary movies. I mean, and maybe we'll discuss what a few scary movies that we can watch, and recommend later in the recommendations. So without further ado, let's introduce our very special guest and friend. He currently is a young filmmaker, just graduated, but has already made a few short films under his name. He is also a blogger, and under the name Cinesensual. So you can look at his movie reviews and essays on film. And he is also a contributing writer at CNN Philippines. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a PI welcome to John Patrick Manio, also known as Joker. Welcome, Joker, to the PI podcast.
Welcome.
Hello, PI yung lahat.
Yun.
Yeah, that's how you greet the audience. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Hello,
Joker,
guys.
yeah. So, Joker, I know your work, and if you notice, like we got you especially here because we noticed that your work, like Lysistrata and I believe an adaptation of No Exit. I've watched both of your films, and they're quite quite scary actually, and a lot of homage to the horror genre. So perhaps you can tell us maybe why you got into film and why you choose to get into these topics with this style of like scary movies. How do you make movies, scary?
Kasi for me personally, nagsimula yung love ko sa cinema through horror talaga. As in conscious love for the format. Kasi previously naman, oo, mahilig ako manood ng pelikula, pero hindi until I watched horror during my high school years. I really had this obsession over cinema. And nag-spill out lang siya into other genres like the westerns, the action films. So parang ang genesis talaga nito ay horror. So parang fascination ko talaga ay horror. And as we all know, maraming types of horror and maraming ways to, scare the audience. So parang me as a filmmaker, I have this viewpoint. Actually, hindi siya principle. More of sariling gusto ko lang.
Okay.
Na parang mang-disturb ng audience.
Okay. Yeah.
Na parang, PI niyong lahat.
Tama,
You're watching my film, PI niyong lahat.
But,
parang,
yeah.
ayun lang, may ganong fascination lang ako doon. Kaya more of, hiwalay ako sa batch ko nung gumawa ng films na yun. Kasi, I made these films a school, requirements siya, a finals requirement. So, parang, ako lang talaga yung, I remember na, minamandate kami ng professor ko na gumawa ng horror. Tapos lahat ng mga kaklase ko nun, ayaw nila. Kasi may iba silang gustong gawin. Tapos ako naman parang, exactly in my plan.
Yeah.
Kasi bala ko talaga gumawa ng horror. So parang, ayun, dun nagsimula kung bakit ganito yung genre of specialty ko. Hindi ko sinasabing specialty. Parang more of desire or preference.
It's an orientation, so yeah. But do you remember the first few horror films that really scared you that got into horror? Like, do you have any titles?
Where did it
Maybe
start?
More than one? Yeah. You never get your first time, yeah.
I think my first horror film that I glimpsed, hindi fully na panood But tapa ko nun, I think it was Gothica.
Is this the one with Halle Berry?
That's sick.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Kasi nun parang sa amin dati, may hilig bumili ng mga DVDs yung magulang ko. So parang nakikita ko yung titles ng mga horror films na natakot ako before. Ang weird nga nung evolution ng taste ko Dati kasi talagang ayoko ng horror. Kasi nga, di ba, more of cartoons ako, ganyan, Pixar, ganyan. Hindi lang dahil I just got fascinated with slasher films talaga. Doon nagsimula. Sa slasher genre, like the Nightmare on Elm Street style, Friday the 13th, yung mga yun. Doon ako The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Halloween. Parang napanood ko nila lahat.
Wow.
Ko sila lahat. Parang weird nga. From being this kid na takot sa horror.
Yeah.
I really got into very gory stuff. Slashers, splatters, the sauce, mga yan. Parang ang lala.
What happened?
Anyway, so parang,
wait, perhaps, of course, I want to ask, what is the scariest movie that you know, and maybe which ones influenced you in your journey into horror? Wow. Yeah.
The scariest. Hindi ko maalala.
Or the one, any ones that influenced you, maybe. Like, you think, I want to put this in my films, or yeah.
Paanong influence? Like, natakot talaga ako, or conscious influence na I want to emulate this style?
Either, maybe, or whichever you can answer. Yeah.
I think nag-gravitate ako sa Lynchian horror.
Lynch? Yeah, like David Lynch. Like, yes. Which titles in particular?
Eraserhead.
That's a good one.
No, I think Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks.
That's a favorite. As a favorite of Twin Peaks. Parang sila. Recent influences sila on my style of drawing.
Okay. I think I'm curious about let's go back to kung kaya mo hukayin, ano ba yung pinaka nakakatakot? And I'm curious about it.
Wait, yeah.
The scariest. Regardless of whether it influenced you or not, regardless. It's just the scariest shit that you've ever seen.
Actually, no, I'm actually curious just to give Joker time to answer. Like, maybe you, Borge, like, what's the scariest thing you've watched? Wolf of Wall Street? Capitalists making money and enjoying themselves?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I would have the same answer. I forgot. Probably Gothica would be there because I didn't finish it as well.
Gaya.
No. Okay, I'm so scared of it that I started making jokes about it. Gothica. So
Gothica.
Okay. But scariest.
The Tagalog na hika.
Why? I think that one of those Thai films. I forgot the title. The one you made, Shutter. If I'm not mistaken.
I remember Shutter Island with like Leonardo DiCaprio. To be honest, like, well, I have 3 examples. Number 1, if you remember, Extreme Ghostbusters, and it's animated, but my God, like it was back in Disney Channel, so of course it's right next to Mickey Mouse and all that. But like Extreme Ghostbusters has some of the most gross-looking, twisted monsters you can find. And of course, like it's even scarier because actually, original Ghostbusters is actually like well, it's the comedy adventure starring Bill Murray, and it's like, it's not, the ghosts there weren't scary, but Extreme Ghostbusters, like it's gross. Like there's this version of the Pied Piper with teeth coming out of his stomach and like this weird proboscis that made it look like a mosquito. So it's like deformities. Another one, and I think this is weird, like if you remember, Stephen King, actually. I don't know a lot of Stephen King, but the one that really scared me was Misery. And it's not really like, it doesn't have monsters in it or like gore, but it's about this number 1 fan like capturing this author, and then she tied him to his bed to force him to finish the book that he was supposed to publish. And he tried to escape. And when he tried to escape, he actually, well, this is one of the highlights of the film. He actually got a hammer and broke both his legs. So hindi siya matatakas. So imagine like something as simple as that, being trapped by your number 1 fan, who you'd think that, oh, there's a sense of security that's like, oh, this person likes me. Eventually it turns out to be a psycho. Like, so it's the dynamics of becoming like someone who is safe with you to your worst enemy. I can force you to.
Not come to think of it, I think before we turn it back to Joker, I think it's not a movie that scared me the most.
Okay.
It was actually my binge reading of Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, okay. His short stories or his poetry?
His short stories. Short stories.
Okay.
His poetry is great. Shut up. That is his short stories. His short stories actually gave me. I actually triggered my insomnia for a month. So
any particular story?
I think most of the scary stories, if not all of them. It's just I had insomnia after reading that one, and it influenced my early short stories as well, which is quite amusing. But yeah, right. I think it's not the movie that scared the shit out of me, but yeah, Edgar Allan Poe.
Okay. Well, that's our share. Now, Joker, have you thought of a title that you remember that's very scary? Yeah.
Actually, tatlo sila.
Okay.
Parang, dati na to kasi ngayon hindi na ako natatakot sa horror. Pero ito, as in bata, these films scare the shit out of me.
Okay.
Unang-una, in chronological order. Final Destination 3.
Okay.
Okay. 3 in particular.
Yeah, 3 in particular. I remember seeing the DVD cover sa cabinet. Parang takot na takot ako. Kasi I saw the scenes, na parang, the roller coaster scenes, the one in the saloon. Parang, dahil doon, nagkaroon ako ng weird fascination sa mga roller coasters. Parang hindi ako takot sa kanila eh. More of, shit, parang gusto ko sumakay, knowing na maybe I will be killed for it.
Well, nakakatakot talaga yung roller coaster sa Pilipinas kasi baka nga biglang masira. So,
Oh, may ganun
they
siyang
don't look
tendency.
safe. Yeah. Lalo sa
Lalo na
Star City, my God.
Star,
Okay.
yeah, especially
Uh-huh.
Star City. Kasi yung times na sabay yung trips ko sa Star City and that film.
Mm-hmm.
Nung lumabas siya, di ba? Parang,
Mm-hmm.
di ba elementary days? So parang field trip mo lagi sa Star City,
Mm-hmm.
Enchanted Kingdom. So parang,
Mm-hmm.
gusto ko bang sumakay dito or not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yun. First one, Final Destination 3.
Mm-hmm.
The second is the first Paranormal Activity.
Mm-hmm.
I
Paranormal.
remember
Okay.
seeing it
Mm-hmm.
on TV sa
Mm.
cable
Okay.
late at night. And I remember thinking that it was actually real.
Mm-hmm.
Kaya
Oh.
dahil doon, para ilang linggo ako hindi nakakatulog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lost sleep over that.
Mm-hmm.
Siguro yun yung pinaka-film na hindi ako nakatulog.
Mm-hmm.
Shit.
Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
Oh.
Eh,
And the third one
Mm.
is actually a Stephen King movie din.
Mm-hmm.
1408.
Mm.
Oh yeah, the room. Room 1408.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one with the hotel room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Ayun. So
Starring who
parang
again? Yeah, do you
John
remember?
Cusack.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
John Cusack.
What was
So
scary about
parang
it? Yeah.
stuck siya sa isang room, hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
So parang ano siya ghost, parang ghost writer siya, debunker. Parang
Mm.
nagdi-debunk siya ng mga. So parang ito kasing hotel room na ito, parang haunted daw siya. So he stayed there and shit happened.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Watch it, it's so good. I think it's one of the better underrated Stephen
Yeah.
King adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's
1408.
underrated. Pero nakakaano siya, it's psycho scare, jump scare.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
may gore bin, if I can, yeah, may gore part din eh.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kakatuwayan din eh. I think it's the trigger yung the song, it's only just begun. So nakakagago yun.
Actually, even things that are harmless that become scary, that's the effective part about it. It becomes corrupted and yeah.
I think the plot of the movie, just for our listeners, so that they can be enticed to listen, is the room is haunted in the sense that it would force you to kill yourself.
Oh.
And nag-accumulate yung mga residents ng room. So I'll stop there. But that's the curse of the room.
Mm-hmm.
You will never get out of it until you're dead.
Yeah. Okay.
Thinking that.
Yeah. So just to recap and comment here, but clearly we have very different answers and different movie titles with different styles. But maybe I want to try and ask, Joker, as both a fan and a maker of films, what exactly makes a movie scary, and how do you make a scary movies? Like, what are techniques, and what you're looking for a scary film?
Ako, personally, I think mas nag-gravitate ako sa para existential moral horror.
Moral horror.
Yes. Although I'm also a big fan of body horror. Kasi di ba doon na ako nagsimula, di ba? Slashers, ganyan. And splatters. Pero right now kasi may something about existential, even cosmic horror na parang it's more visceral, I think. And it's more interesting conceptually. Kasi for me, horror, it's all about, parang turning over a concept and figuring out how to bastardize this concept or, corrupt this concept. Parang, ayun, what's the question again? Sorry?
How do we, what makes a movie scary? Like, how do you make
how do you scare people?
Scary? Yeah. How do you scare people? Yeah. Go.
May nagsabi na parang a writer na parang horror is one of the hardest genres to write.
Yes.
Because you have to be very, as a writer, parang scientific about it. Of saan ka maglalagay ng jump scares na ganyan, di ba? Pero ano siya, it's hindi tradition of a commercial horror, I think.
Right.
Parang, how do you sell this type of horror? Kasi to me, ako personally, ang dali lang manakot ng tao. Like Borge said earlier, di ba? Even the most simple of things you can make scary. You just have to, siguro nasa execution lang lahat. So, how do you make something scary? Especially considering na alam mo yung audience mo. I think, kailangan mo ng, deep understanding of your audience and what makes them tick. And siguro you also need empathy. Pero, you also have to bastardize that empathy. You have to be super, di naman cruel, pero may pagkasadista kasi ang paggawa ng horror. Parang alam mo na ito yung makaka-disturb sa isang tao. Pero willingly, ito yung gagawin mo. Parang it's the best horror filmmakers, I think, or even writers.
Yes.
I know, parang alam nila yung audience sila. Parang alam nila kung ano yung moral codes or boundaries na, babanggain, babasagin, babalik ka rin.
Yeah.
Parang may
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, finish.
So parang, I just want to say na parang may something sa horror na hindi siya cancelable as a term. The current cancel notion na parang, bakit mo iisipin na politically incorrect itong film na to? Di ba? Ito nga yun nga yung point ng horror na parang you make it politically incorrect. That's how you make it effective. Wala secret cause dyan. You have to invert or violate everything that you know about a certain subject.
Yeah. I think ang take ko dyan, I do agree with the Joker here. But just to be a bit more specific, it's about targeting what is intimate. And there are so many things that are intimate. Kaya napakaraming horror genres eh. Empathy allows you to find out what is intimate in the person, what are they trying to protect, what are they trying to value, and then you try to, when you say bastardize, you try to corrupt. You try to twist it into something that they will not accept. I think, for example, the Cthulhu mythos Cthulhu mythos created by Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft. It's existential to an extent that first it defies common understanding of the source of mankind.
Yes.
The notion of God. And even control over the human mind. Kasi primary power ni Cthulhu, it's not only about him being an ancient per se, it's about him controlling people's minds.
The funny thing is, and I do agree that, you have to know what scares you and what scares your society in order to scare your audience. But the weird thing is that, and I think I think I've said this before in a different podcast, that something that if you're able to find words for it, it's something that is dead in your heart. So it's the same thing with horror. If you're able to write down something that is that scares you, it in some ways it no longer scares you. So in some way, I don't know, like I've never written it, but I imagine that once you externalize that thing that scares you, maybe you create the monster, you draw it, or you make like a animatronic version of the monster, parang hindi na siya nakakatakot. In some ways, and I think Joker can agree with this, no, or react to it, is that once you reveal the monster, in the movie, it loses its mystery and mystique, and so it's like, and you'll see the strings, you'd see the gears, you'd see that, of course, maybe if it's a slasher, you see that he's human, so it's not no longer scary. So in some cases, maybe I don't know if Joker can react to this, but in some cases you have to, in a way, maintain that mystery to yourself as a creator in order to make it stay scary. Like I don't know, maybe you can react to that, but what do you think, Borge? Like, does that make sense? Like,
when you, I think it depends on the type of monster that you can expose. I mean, there are some monsters that are actually out in the open, and you don't need to expose. You don't need to expose them. That's what's scary about them. Nasa labas na sila.
Because it's like Jaws. It's a shark. And it's scary because you only see the fin and you only hear the music. Dun, 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 dun.
You're referring to the movie, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I have something to say.
Yes, ikaw, go.
So parang, ako kasi I believe na horror hindi siya nanggagaling sa labas. It always sprongs from the one that you are trying to scare. I think I'll touch upon this later. Parang sa Philippine horror, I think for the longest time, ito yung malingi. Kasi parang it always creates a monster for you to be scared with. Hindi siya looking in, out, going outward. This is a protagonist. It's always about meron kang other.
Yeah.
Na doon nanggagaling yung takot nung protagonist mo. So parang I'll touch upon this later. Pero ako kasi yun nga, parang horror, it's always about coming from the spectator. Hindi siya from the outward body. So parang meron kasi akong belief na parang if you study the history of horror, the modern horror genre, hindi ko pinapertain yung before that, the folk horror, mga ganun. The modern horror genre, meron siyang relative in science fiction. Na di ba yung horror genre nagsimula siya sa literary?
Yeah.
Yung mga Victorian literature, ganun. So parang same siya ng science fiction pero iba lang siya ng attitude. Na parang science fiction it's always about knowing or knowing about something. Yung horror it's also knowing about it pero yun nga iba yung attitude nila. Parang pagka science fiction parang gusto mo siyang malaman pero sa horror parang ano to, di ba?
Yeah.
Ba't may ganito?
The unknown.
Frankenstein, ganyan. Ano siya? Sci-fi siya.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yung Dracula, it's also sci-fi. May pagka-sci-fi tendencies siya. So parang lagi na parang kung kasi di ba yung age ng panahon na yun, na umusbong yung sci-fi, parang age, industrial revolution, di ba? Age of enlightenment. So parang binastardize lang ng horror yung milieu nung times na yun, na parang ang dami tayong nalalaman in our own surroundings.
Yeah.
So parang, how do you bastardize that? Na parang,
yun nga, I think ang nangyari ang palagay ko lang as far as my observation goes, the Industrial Revolution, it created so much technology. The horror genre actually fed on the uncertainties behind those technological innovations that the scientists, the mechanics, the engineers, they want to do something with technology, pero hindi lang yun ang pwedeng gawin. For example, Frankenstein's monsters, it's harnessing existing technology to create to reanimate a corpse.
And violating the laws of nature.
Violating and playing God, so on and so forth. So every innovation would always have an uncertainty. So, wait, ano ba yung nakakatakot na? Is there any recent movies about social media or social media oriented? Something scary?
Marami.
Unfriended, yung mga ganun.
Unfriended.
That one. Yeah. So that's one manifestation of it. So you have a technology, there's an intended purpose, but horror is about fleshing out the possibilities, the horrifying possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, Japanese horror in the 90s, heavily reliant sa technology. Technological advancements ng Japan. Na if you watch films ni Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Ringu, it's always about
TV.
may Betamax ka, may tape ka, may television siya. Even
like Sadako.
Cronenberg, kay David Cronenberg din. It's reliant on the technology. Videodrome, scanners, di ba?
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, besides of course the development of technology, like currently, it ties itself to the milieu, but it's also actually been constant. Like even before horror films or horror stories, there have been like we tell ourselves, maybe like to scare our friends. We like to scare, like the parents like to scare their kids to make sure, like Krampus in Christmas, in Europe, just to say, or maybe the boogeyman, so that they would behave and and stay out of the closet, but I suppose we can ask ourselves why, because if you notice also in our milieu, there's always a horror film, even though we can argue that they're not as scary, but we'll talk about that later. But like it's constant. And if even in the podcast industry, a lot of the most most popular ones are talk about horror. It's telling horror stories. There's, I believe, if you know Cripsilog, they talk about Filipino horror stories, and another one is Filipino crime stories. May isa nga, Kilabot. We can check that out. Actually, I think I have a contribution there. Anyway, but yeah, there even podcasts. There are horror podcasts. So perhaps my question there is like, why do we want to scare ourselves? Like, what's the point? Why? Why do you think is it so popular? It's always popular. What do you think? Why do you always have an audience? Joker. What do you think? Why our society is fascinated with scariness? Yeah, or fear. Yeah.
It has something to do with a psychological need within us na we want to confront what scares us. And something about the thing about horror fiction is we know it's fiction. Parang ito nga yung parang philosophy of horror ni Noel, Carroll, di ba? If you've read that book. Parang he posited na parang kaya tayo mahilig sa horror kasi we know that hindi siya totoo. And we know that where we are as audience na nanonood or nagbabasa lang, we know that we are safe when we are consuming these horror fictions. Kaya natin siya gusto kasi alam natin na kahit ilang horror siya, it won't harm us. It won't kill us na parang kahit pagaan siya nakakatakot. At the end of the day, pag tapos na yung pelikula or tapos na yung libro, it's over. We know that meron tayong safety net na matatapos siya at hindi tayo masasaktan or mga harm. So parang, yun nga the funny thing about horror, na parang interested ako to blur the lines. Na paano natin masasabi na okay, bakit natin tinitingnan na okay lang yung manakit ng tao, pumatay. Kapag fiction, at bakit totoo na parang ayun, gusto natin i-cancel yung tao, ganyan, di ba? I mean, obviously naman, yung more of a philosophical stance why I'm intrigued about that notion. Parang, for example, the serial killer genre, true crime, the slasher film, di ba? Parang, ang dami na ngayong sa Netflix na parang true crime series na parang based on real serial killers, di ba? Like sila Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. Parang, if you watch those series, ang daming tao na nagiging fans ng mga actual serial killers. And that's something fascinating na meron tayong nilalagay natin sila sa pedestal. Dahil yung distance natin sa kanila, may distance na na parang alam na ng audience na ginagawa silang fans. Parang ang layo na nila kung nasaan tayo ngayon as audience. Na parang patay na sila, ganyan. Parang inaano na natin sila, ninalayo na siya natin sila as something more fictional. So parang yun nga yung pinaka-criticism sa true crime. We tend to lionize these real serial killers. Pero kung sila Jason Voorhees naman yan, or sila Freddy Krueger, okay lang naman. Wala namang issue wala naman nakikitang issue doon. Or parang, I tend to read a lot about these things. So parang, okay lang naman sa, woke people. Kung sila, fan ka nila, di ba? Jason Voorhees, sila Leatherface. Ako nga, ang dami kong figure sila dito eh. Kompleto yung mga slasher folk. Pero kapag pumunta ka sa true crime genre, parang ang dami kong nababasa problematic na based on that. Kasi nga, people know na parang historically, ito silang tao, pero yung napapanood mo kasi sa mga series, hindi sila yung totoong tao eh. Parang fictionalized versions na sila eh, ng mga historical people.
Yeah. Kaya fan
and that's why
go ahead. Go.
And that's why we like horror because alam natin na fiction na lang to. Nagkaroon na sila ng ibang layer na alam natin na hindi nila tayo masasaktan.
Yeah. And maybe I want to ask you maybe about this need because if you notice, there's even this the horror genre is even saturated here in particular because in our society currently there's not a lot of things to be quote unquote afraid of besides of course economic crisis or whatever but it becomes complacent, like we feel too safe, so therefore we want to have that thrill, that things are still scary, there's still a sense of danger. So do you think we need that sense of danger to feel like alive, or what do you think about that psychological need?
Well, I think Matt's statement actually encapsulates what's wrong. There are so many things to be scared in real life. There are so many things to be scared in real life. So to say that there's very little, it's already to an extent partly delusional. Pero I think elaborate ko lang yung kay Joker kanina, the notion of distance, that we would like to confront our fears without being killed by it. I think that is our substitute for actually confronting real sources of fear. That would haunt us on a daily basis, but more subtly. You're afraid of your electricity bill. You're afraid that you would if your wage would fit the next day. You would be afraid if someone would kill you. And going back to that one, the very people who lionize death squads are the very people who haven't seen a person getting killed or haven't seen a dead body. I've seen a dead body sa may tough MRT na kakalat-kalat.
Ay, wow!
I think that one incident.
Mismo?
Yung sa MRT sa may Pasay. Yeah, I think there was a drop dead body there early in the morning when I was, it was in the news in the evening. So the very people who lionize serial killers or any acts of killing, they're the ones who are very far away. But when it knocks on their door, that is where, the documentary Aswang would come in there.
Yeah.
So, yun. Pero, regarding what's the psychological need? Yeah, I do agree with that. But there's a psychological need to confront our fears. Is there a psychological need to scare ourselves? I think that's our substitute. It's our means of. Okay, if society would change, and the thing is, I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who doesn't have a need to scare oneself. I don't share that need. There's something wrong with me. But I have chosen to confront actual scary shit that would probably kill me or my career.
Okay.
But I'm speaking from that perspective. I don't share that need to scare myself. So I'm also wondering, why do people want to? So why do people consume so scary films? Yun ang ano eh. But the audience, hindi nakasama si Joker dito because Joker is the one creating it already at this point, and he's he's the one who wants to scare the shit out of people. But the audience, and especially those who lionize serial killers, those who are fans of crime thrillers, who keep an eye on such things. Yun eh. I think it's indicative of a need to break from pre-existing norms. And that's actually what the horror genre, may it be in literature or in films, actually do. They break norms. For example, in my slasher film, premarital sex is always one part of slasher films.
Right.
And then they get killed.
Okay, yeah.
Why is premarital sex being partnered with the performers getting killed?
Yeah.
It's basically breaking two moral boundaries at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's, and I remembered one thing. I would recommend this later on. I would elaborate on it. But there's a graphic novel entitled Crossed. And that graphic novel, the plot is there's a virus. And the virus doesn't make people into zombies. It makes people uninhibited.
Right.
So uninhibited that they would start raping and eating each other. And that's how
I think I know that. Yeah.
That's the basically collapse of society. Meron isang series on Crossed about
why am I not surprised na Garth Ennis ito?
Na?
Na Garth Ennis ito.
But yeah, going back to this, meron isang series there's a nun who was not infected by the virus, but she became the leader.
Is it a nun with a gun?
No. But she became the leader of that group of crossed infectees. She was not, but she just painted herself with the cross. Pero hindi siya infected, but she became the leader of that. So I would leave the deductions to our audience. But you can read that series. But yeah, horror actually breaks moral bounds, and I think that's also one need. That's also one need that is being satisfied by the horror genre.
Yeah, and take note, actually, based on what you said, usually it handles things from a particular, social context and a certain specific fears of a particular society. Like what you said, there's a time where, I think sometimes even Friday the 13th, Jason would go after teenagers who would trespass into camps and, go skinny dipping at bawal yan.
So have sex.
Yeah, sex, exactly.
One of the tenets of, the slasher genre is, it's against, hindi naman against, ito, I'll delve into this later, pero sa slasher genre, di ba, pag may nagsasex, tayo silang namamatay. At yung laging nabubuhay sa dulo, yung tinatawag nating final girl. And they always have to be a virgin.
Oh. Okay.
And nagtatay ito dati sa, America's cultural context way back then in the 80s, na lahat ng slasher films ay cautionary tale sila on teenage debauchery. And that's the thing about horror. It's always immoralizing genre din. Ano siya moralist din siya May pagka-cautionary tale-ish din siya Yun yung another interesting about the horror genre is it tends to break boundaries, pero at the end of the day, yung mensahe niya, sometimes, even usually, it takes to, reaffirm these boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the earliest works of the horror genre, Dante's Inferno.
Is it? It seems more like
for
like
the
study,
people, for people at that time, it's meant to scare the shit out of people.
And folktales.
You mean like
The original
Brothers Grimm,
folktales.
yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Anderson.
Yeah.
They're scary as shit, pero at the end of the day, meron silang moral message.
In other words, and I think that's the political dimension then. It reaffirms certain moral codes, and if you go against them, this will happen to you. Come to think of it, that's all. Well, this also reminds, the creation of the boogeyman and Aswang, right? When Aswang initially was created by the CIA, right? And that they actually cut like vampire bite marks into people cadavers necks, so people said, "Oh, they've sucked the blood out of these rebels." I think so. It's meant to scare people in the farmlands. So that's the political dimension, I suppose, right? You're saying something, Joker? Yeah.
Yeah, parang a safety net as a horror maker talaga.
Okay.
Kung kinakancel ka na ng tao, ng audience mo, lagi mo na sasabihin, kahit na pinortray ko siyang ganyan, hindi naman ganyan yung message niya talaga. And yun yung talaga sa horror genre, it's inherent in itself na kahit na gaanong crossing the boundaries ka pumunta, at the end of the day, kung yung mensahe mo sa dulo ay positive, it will always reaffirm those boundaries. Kaya, I urge you to watch very nihilistic films na talaga wala talagang point.
The pointless horror.
Like?
The point is itself. The horror is the means, the ends, not the means. Kasi doon talaga, yung talagang pag-cross ng boundaries. Sa mga, di ba meron tayong, always problematic sa akin itong term na gratuitous violence na, di ba, sinasabi natin gratuitous violence and unnecessary ganyan. Pero, the point is violence. Yun yung ends niya talaga.
Right.
Wala siyang point kasi ang point, yun na mismo. Violence na siya talaga. Cruelty, ganyan.
Right.
Siguro kung walang identity yung tao wherein the violence is being done upon, it's just a generic human being. Yeah.
I'm curious to know actually, because just an observation with contemporary horror. Maybe because I'm different now, and not a lot of movies scare me anymore. Even like Mike Flanagan's films, Midsummer and Hereditary, they're not quite scary, but they look good and cool. But I'd like to ask you though, like, what is scary today? Because if you notice, a lot of what was scary back then, you can trace it back to the social milieu. Like, for example, even in serial killer, and even what's the word?
Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper is a scary story. So it's that anxiety of like being murdered in London, or like even with the Friday the 13th and the slasher films, that was the false security of suburban life, for example, that they'd come into the houses. It's to scare people that, there might be a killer, which are based on real killers in suburban America. But in terms of like today,
ano nakakatakot niyo?
Ano ba nakakatakot? Kasi parang unang-una, karamihan ng mga pelikula ngayon ng franchise, hindi nakakatakot kasi alam na natin na si Freddy ganyan, si Jason ganyan. In fact, I don't know, like I can argue that a huge part of horror, besides mystery, is also novelty. So when you lose its novelty and you have like Saw 9 or Resident Evil 5 or 6, in a way you're not you're not scared anymore. But maybe you can remark on that. But what is the scariest thing now? What is something we should be scared of at maybe 2022? Like what? Maybe you can jump in also in this Borge. But personally, I haven't been scared by a film in a long time. But I don't know. What do you think?
Ako, I don't know if you'll agree.
Okay.
I'm gonna say this, controversial. Hindi siya controversial, pero I think ang pinaka-currency ng horror talaga ay hindi yung scare factor. It's more of the social commentary.
Okay.
It's always about that. The messaging, the commentary, and how you attach it to the milieu, the sign of the times.
Right.
What's the word? Ano yung tawag doon? It starts with the letter Z.
Zeitgeist.
The zeitgeist, yeah.
Okay.
It's always about the zeitgeist. So parang, lagi akong no-off sa mga tao na tinatanong nila sa akin. Maganda ba tong horror na to? Tong horror film na to? Hindi naman siya nakakatakot.
Okay.
It's always a false notion that a good horror movie should be scary. Diba? Parang it's a false notion. Because ako personally, maraming magagandang horror films in our times ngayon na hindi naman siya talaga nakakatakot.
Yeah.
Parang vibe lang, hindi nakakatakot, vibe lang.
Do you know, have you watched Blonde? It's a horror film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah. Well, it is kind of scary. Yeah. Okay. Well, Blonde is like an adaptation of a biography of Marilyn Monroe's life, you know, but it is, what makes it horror? Yeah, Joker?
It's, objection siya ng idea of Marilyn Monroe. It's not a biography. I'd argue it's not a biography. It's objection of the concept of being Marilyn Monroe. And yun yung naging flaws sa marketing niya, I think. Kasi maraming tao ayaw sa pelikula dahil di ba parang exploitative siya.
It didn't happen. Like there was even a controversy on how she was quote unquote forced to be have an abortion, but that never happened. Yeah, yes. But yeah. So what do you think was the point of that? You know, you said objection. Like, can you explain that a bit? So what's the point of this objection concept of Marilyn Monroe?
Yung objection is a theory by Julia Kristeva. Na parang having something that you know and defamiliarizing yourself with it to the point na di ka na familiar with something na familiar ka in the beginning. Parang you corrupt it.
Yeah.
In simple terms, you corrupt it. Na parang you make yourself an other or you other something.
Right.
To the point na yung relationship nyo dun sa dalawang bagay. Relationship mo sa isang bagay. It is ruptured.
So it's kind of like you take the element of real tragedy of Marilyn Monroe's life, and in a way, when I watched it was exaggerated to the point where wala naman siyang abortion, but there was a scene where there was a forced abortion. Although I'd argue that it's weird that there's some scenes that are in color and that are black and white, and the scenes in black and white are in a way fiction, or maybe in our head, maybe she's imagining it. So it's as her experience in life is as if she was forced to get an abortion. So I don't know, maybe that's my interpretation, but yeah, in a way it is horrific, and the fact that it is happening to Marilyn Monroe adds to the discomfort. In fact, I would admit that it was uncomfortable to watch, but not necessarily scary per se, but it is an attempt, I guess, and that is scary. And I think a lot of what's scary now is maybe very conceptual, but I don't know if it's that is related to milieu. I don't know. Yeah.
I think the fact na maraming turn off yung tao doon, I think that's our times horror. The horror of our times.
Okay.
And it's identity horror. It's body horror.
Okay.
It's violation of the body.
Okay.
Yun yung, di ba parang yung zeitgeist natin ngayon, parang focus tayo sa identity politics. The self. Identity politics. The gender. sex.
My body, my rules.
My body, my rules. So parang, yung woke agenda natin, di ba? Yung tinatawag natin wokeness. Centered siya sa self.
Okay.
Baka sabihin, pero yun yung nakikita ko.
Okay.
So parang, kung gusto mo gawa ng effective horror, you violate the self, the body.
Yeah.
And iba yung violation ng body ngayon sa body before.
So
Dati, it's more of ano you
mutilation.
treat the body. Yeah, you mutilate, di ba? Yung parang you treat the body as an object to be carved. You treat it basically as meat before. Ngayon, you treat it as a vessel for yourself.
For the soul, and it's like
it's
things
more
like
violating. It's more rape, actually.
Rape. Oh, okay. Ooh, careful. Trigger warning.
Right yeah.
Shit. Yeah. The fact that you're being violated not in body but also your agency, your dignity. Yes. I mean, of course, you're violating dignity when you're being cut up, but you don't have to cut up the body to cut up your dignity. That's interesting.
Regarding the zeitgeist, I think that may apply to the middle classes in the Philippines. But for the lower classes, we are still very social. Pero naisip ko lang, I don't know. It's a brain fart of a movie idea. I think something that may be horrifying is an idea of a serial marites.
Okay.
Pero the plot would be the marites may have an obsession with gossip, but sometimes the gossip is too outlandish that the marites would be forced to make it real.
Oh, that's cool.
Tapos pag may sinabi siya, ay, nabuntis na yung isa. He would actually kidnap one person and another and make them, copulate and reproduce just to make the entire thing real. Then probably the movie will end when the marites says that this person dies.
Write that down. Well, actually, speaking, but I'm reminded of this. Well, it's not quite about marites, but it is about a similar theme. There is this, if you know the film Iska, which is about this woman who, it's based on a real story of this woman who actually tied up her mentally challenged son. So it's a news item, but apparently they try to imagine how that happened, why that happened. So apparently it's because, well, even back then, it parang una chismis. Like to say, anong ginagawa, parang iniiwan mo yung anak mo na tapos nakatali pa siya. Well, that's not true. But eventually, because she could not find, number one, she can't find anyone to take care of it. Her husband left, or she drove her husband away, who was raping her and abusing their son. So they pushed him away. And to the point where, she had no other choice but to tie him up. Naging totoong chismis. So it's out of her control. She wasn't in a way she was forced to, but it wasn't deliberate. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a social commentary.
It is social commentary. In fact, people talk about poverty porn. What about poverty horror? In a way, maybe an example of that would be Parasite. It is kind of horrific. But started as a black comedy, but the second half is horrific. Yeah. Which kind of brings me to, I suppose, our next question, which is like, how do you scare a Filipino audience? What is scary to a Filipino audience? And of course, Filipino culture has been fascinated by horror. We love to watch horror films to the point where ang dami ng shake, rat, and roll. Pang ilan na? Parang shake, rat, ang dami. But to the point, well, if you remember, there's not a lot of really examples that you can remember fondly. That was scary. It's like either it's ironically, like Feng Shui, maybe like Chris Aquino scream like, oh! I don't know if that's how someone screams, but I want to ask now about Joker and as a Filipino filmmaker himself and fan of film. Like what do you think about Filipino horror films? And what scares a Filipino?
Honestly, Matt,
Yeah.
It's easy to scare a Filipino college
Okay.
student.
A college
It's easy
student.
to scare a Filipino, activist. It's easy
Uh-huh.
to scare a Filipino professional. But
Okay.
I don't know what scares Filipinos. It's hard
Ah.
to know what scares Filipinos
Mhm.
as an identity. I think wala tayo kinakatakutan, I think.
Masyado tayong resilient para
Ang
matakot. Oo. Matapang
something
tayo?
kasi
Oo.
parang, like I said earlier, di ba, parang yung horror natin more of reliant siya sa the other. You
Mhm.
have to make a monster
Mhm.
for you to scare
Yeah.
someone. Pero the thing is, yung mga commercial horror movies natin, hindi nila nagigets yung point. Na yung
Okay.
relationship natin sa mga maligno,
Mhm.
sa mga mythological creatures. Diba ano siya? Conducive relationships siya sa
Mhm.
mga folk natin. Yun yung
Mhm.
kamalian ng 13, I think. Na parang
Ah.
you treated these mythological creatures, yung mga tikbalang, mga supposedly na nakakatakot, mga
Mhm.
tiyanak, as enemies. Well, in fact, ang dami nagsasabi na parang folklore, ang folk attitude ng mga
Mhm.
ninuno natin nun ay yung relationship natin is always bound on respect, on
Mhm.
respecting each other's boundaries. Hindi natin sila kinakatakutan.
Mhm.
It's more of, we know that if we fuck them, they'll
Yeah.
fuck us back.
Oh.
Yeah, yun nga eh. Hindi tayo takot tayong mabwisit sila. We are
Oo.
afraid of pissing them off. Hindi,
Uh-huh.
kahit yung aswang eh. Actually, yung communal, the communal habit of, dubbing someone who is isolated, mysterious as, aswang. It's actually our fear of pissing that person off.
Mhm.
Kahit
Takot
na yung,
tayo sa takot tayo sa galit.
No. We are afraid of offending people.
Offending. Okay.
We're afraid.
So it's a cultural
Because,
value. Okay.
Yeah.
kaya, if you ask me how do you scare a Filipino? I really don't know, and I want to
Find
find
out.
out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Kasi, yung audience ko,
No.
my films, ang audience ko ay the college student.
Mhm.
Alam ko na may values sila na politically
Okay.
correct, yung mga moral values, intrinsic values.
Mhm.
And it's easy to manipulate those. Pero if you're gonna scare a whole country, wala tayong nakatakutan. We
Ayun eh.
elect movers in office.
Okay.
How are you scared?
Yeah, how do you scare this society? Are we in a paradox wherein we are, or the society can be scared of also many things that it could not be scared at all?
Well, that is a good question.
Yeah.
That's why I think no single horror movie can appeal to as many people. It appeals to some. I remember for some reason Feng Shui, it's or surrounding again Chinese let's see paraphernalia, like spiritual paraphernalia. So they believe in that these objects can be haunted, and that actually appeals to people who are Chinese people who believe in the bagua or like in these artifacts and spiritual artifacts. But yeah, like I don't know, maybe what do you we can ask you guys, like what is the scariest Filipino horror film, if it exists at all, so yeah. Maybe we can dissect that if that to find out. Yeah.
Maybe the better question is, what is the better? Actually, ayoko talagang gamitin as adjective yung scariest when it comes to horror films, because it's treating horror lightly. You're misjudging horror if you just judge it by scariest. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think yun yung stand ko Parang, ano siya, easy adjective siya.
Okay. But what then? What
Most
maybe I can
horrifying.
revise it. Yeah, or okay, that. Or what do you think is the best? There you go. Like, or what is emblematic of a horror film that say, that's a Filipino horror film. You know, like what represents
And
like
si
our
Chris Aquino.
milieu. That's because Aquino. Come to think of it, maybe it's the fact that they've cast Chris Aquino is in a way entertaining for us. Na parang, natatakot yung burgis. She's a queen of talk back in her day. Now she's a shadow of her or shell of herself. But back then, natatakot si Chris Aquino. Maybe that's the point, no? Natatakot pala si Chris Aquino. I don't know, but well, that's feng shui. It recently got restored, but maybe what other examples are there that we can say? Yeah, like what
horrifying.
What is Filipino horror anyway? Like, what does it look like? If it's about aswang, what about?
You have, like I said before, you have to make an outside body.
Okay.
Lagi meron dapat mythological creature or dapat may halimaw, di ba? Typical Chicago Roll, lahat yan may halimaw.
Right.
Na parang tangible. That's the keyword, tangible sila lahat. Meron akong may recent filmmaker that I really like. Si Dodo Dayao. He knows how to abstract horror. Na parang yung films niya more of hindi tangible kung saan nanggagaling yung horror. And I like that kind of horror. Na parang kasi kung nahahawakan mo siya, madali siyang intindihin. Madaling matanggal yung takot mo. Kaba mo. Pag nakikita mo siya, nahahawakan mo siya, naiintindihan mo siya. Get?
Okay, so
it's all about attitude. Horror it's all about attitude.
Can you give an example of his work? Yeah.
Violator.
Midnight
in the Perfect World. Those two feature films. Konti pa lang naman nagagawa niya. Pero those especially Midnight in the Perfect World. Have you seen that?
No. What does he do there?
It's about a group of friends na parang barkada sila, apat sila. Na parang they live in this world na pag patak ng midnight, spooky shit happens. And that's all. Parang accepted nila na nangyayari yun sa mundo nila. Pero ang horror kasi dun is more of the thrill. Na parang, do you know Silent Hill?
Yeah, the franchise, the video game, yeah.
It's very influential sa akin. Parang yun yung type of horror na gusto ko. Na parang the horror always comes within. Na vessel lang yung setting.
Okay.
Na parang vessel lang siya to manifest the horrors that comes from within. Pero yung kasi yung Midnight in the Perfect World na parang pinakakalaban mo yung dilim. Pero hindi mo kasi alam kung ano makikita mo sa dilim.
Tinatakot mo yung sarili.
Depende yun sa'yo. Yun nga eh. Yun yung keyword eh. Para tinatakot mo yung sarili mo.
Yeah. That's really effective to an extent. That's basically the mystique of anchoring yourself on the mysterious or the unknowable. You let the spectators scare themselves.
Yeah.
The weird and the eerie.
No, pinapacilitate mo lang yung pagtakot nila sa sarili nila.
Yeah. I'm just reminded of this comment that I forgot who made it. I think it was in one of the Cinespaces that was doing that. You know, parang sa Pilipinas, nakakatakot tumira sa Pilipinas. It's a scary place. Like there's a lot of like the belletry and dark parts of the city. It can be quite atmospheric and you fear for your life. And yet, for some reason, a lot of movies kind of try but fail to capture it. So I don't know. I mean, I want to ask you, Borge, if there's anything that's scary in the Philippines, or maybe what's a. I mean, there's a huge industry of ghost stories, but parang wala. What do you think, Borge, about what's scary in the Philippines? Yeah.
No, I think my answer for that one is we haven't reached a level of urbanization that have dispelled, our fearful respect of the natural. Yun pa eh. So, marami pa tayong mga puno dito for now. We still have, meron pa tayong mga punso. We still have dark corners that are uninhabitable. I mean, come on. We lived in Shanghai for years. We can walk in Shanghai in 4 a.m. in the morning. We won't be scared by anything. But because we know that it's a highly urbanized area. There's nothing scary in that place. Pero sa Pilipinas kasi, we're not that urbanized yet that we have dispelled corners of unknowable things, Hindi mo alam kung may multo ba dyan o may sasaksak sa'yo. But so meron may mga nooks and crannies pang Maynila na ganun, nakakatakot. Again, hindi siya nakakatakot itself, pero tatakotin mo yung sarili mo.
Okay. Yeah, Joker.
And also, I think when it comes to Filipino horror, important yung localization.
Yeah.
Kasi kung papanoorin mo yung buong Pilipinas na isang horror film, iba-iba yung kinakatakutan ng bawat lugar eh.
Yeah.
May dalawang film na, Bisaya.
Okay.
Parang, it's a zombie film basically. Parang Bisaya. Parang localize yung zombie.
Sorry.
Have you seen Salvage?
Salvage? No, not yet.
It's very good. Found footage siya. Saka,
found footage,
Ingon nato.
Sorry?
Ingon nato. Ingon nato.
Okay, what's that about?
Not like us. I think it's Cebuano. Visayas, yes. Visayas siya. And Salvage is also Visayas. So parang localized yung zombie niya. Kumbaga, yung aswang niya. Di ba kahit yung aswang iba-iba yun eh sa atin. May tik-tik, may aswang, merong manananggal. Iba-iba sila kahit dito sa Pilipinas. Bawat lugar may ibang version ng aswang. So parang ayun I think yung wala sa mainstream horror, sa commercial horror, yung context niya, yung localization. You have to be specific, I think, in order to be effective.
Yeah. So kung nasa urban area ka, ang aswang pala yung marites mo. Ay!
Mas marites Sam, George.
Wala, napasrit lang ako kasi it's already a common feature.
Naalala ko tuloy yung isang joke. Naalala ko tuloy yung isang joke ni Vice Ganda. Sabi niya, anong M ang nakakatakot? Sabi ni Ann, multo. Isa, hindi. Ang maniningil. Mas nakakatakot yung maniningil sa multo. Yung kahit may akala mo multo, you'll be able to live in that house. Pero pag nandiyan ng maniningil, nako, tatakbo ka. So, apparently, that could be a horror, yung maniningil.
Pwede.
So, but I remember, of course, like, let's relate to another subgenre of horror. The serial killer. Parang wala tayong, like, it's not realistic to imagine a serial killer. Like, if you notice, Borge, remember smaller and smaller circles.
Let me just wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Another horror film na actually hindi siya horror.
Okay.
Kisapmata.
I think I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
Anong plot?
It's very scary. At yung halimaw, tatay lang siya na police. It's based on a real, actually true crime din siya. Kasi it's based on a news na pakakinover ni Nick Joaquin.
Okay.
One of his essays na Murder on Balete Street.
Yeah. Okay.
Balete Drive or something. Pero yun, parang siya, it's very scary. At yung characters lang ay isang mag-asawa sa yung tatay ng babae. It's very effective.
Right. So actually,
may isip tuloy akong
yeah,
comedy film. Ano kaya
comedy.
magandang comedy film pag naputol yung puno sa Balete Drive tapos yung multo na-displace. So nagano siya ng bagong re-renta na puno.
Ano mo magsulat tayo ng ganyan? Ang dami natin naiisip. Wow. Actually, okay, speaking of, I was saying, di ba sabi ni Sir Ton na parang it's impossible magkaroon ng serial killer kasi madaling mahanap yan sa mga marites na parang magchichismis din. Ano nangyari saan yan ng biktima? Parang patay na ba yan or something? Tapos yun, they'll trace it and they'll be able to find the killer. So,
mayroon pa isa pang marites na thriller. Yung marites na nagtuturo kung kani-kanino. Pero siya talagang pumapatay.
Killer Marites. It's like a B movie. The B horror film.
Wait, sorry, mali pala ako. Yung Murder and Balete Drive, ano pala siya? Tracy story siya.
Yeah. Okay. Akala ko nga based on Nick Bokin pala. Well, anyway.
And the real news clipping ay The House on Zapote Street.
The House on Zapote Street. Okay.
By Nick Joaquin. Yun yung base ng Kisapmata.
Okay. But yeah, as I was saying, like, we have so many stories of rich, not even literature, but like, parang mga tabloids na parang napugutan ng ulo, nahanap sa drum, so like of people being mangled, etc. And yet for some reason, well, I don't know, Nico Kim did make literature out of it, but for some reason, there were, I don't know, but there was this franchise by Psycom or Viacom, I can't remember, True Filipino Ghost Stories, where there was this small book, like little magazine books that had all Filipino ghost stories. I used to collect them, and yeah, I mean it was successful for a time, but for now, parang wala na siya. I don't know what happened. I suppose we can ask now, like, what has changed, like, about the horror genre, and why can't the mainstream seem to capture it? In fact, I do want to, but there's this. I want to rant a bit. Like, there's this one example that had a great potential. The movie Pagpag, starring like Daniel Padilla and Catherine Bernardo, and it's a great concept wherein there's the pamahiin tradition wherein you should not kailangan magpagpag para hindi ka masundan ng patay or something, or the ghost, otherwise you'd be haunted. But for some reason, it wasn't scary because it's a lot of CGI, and the ghost ended up being, cast as Paolo Avellino. Like, di naman nakakata si Paolo Avellino. Yung iba nga gusto magpahabol eh. So it's like, I don't know. That would have been maybe we should have our own headcanon or our own version of Pagpag. That's like, it's a tradition we all do. We all, hanggang ngayon, nagpapagbag din tayo pag galing sa patay.
Okay,
pero ano ba nangyari kung hindi tayo pagbag? As in, what really happens? No?
Baba tayo ng movie.
Scary.
Baba tayo movie, tapos ang sponsor 7-Eleven.
Pwede. Tapos yun ang safe house pala. Habol pa sa 7-Eleven para safe. Comedy pala yun. Yeah. Whew. Okay. Ano pa? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of rich materials, but for some reason, I mean, it is scary. Maybe that's why we don't need like maybe movies, or because it's inherently scary. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, kasi parang ang daming nakakatakot sa lipunang ito. Totoo lang. So I don't know. Any comment on that, Porch, in terms of like this society, and perhaps why can't we capture it, or we
because we have we have traditions that can quote unquote satisfy spirits. May it be the spirit of the dead or natural spirits.
Or is it because filmmakers takot lang sila mag-go full in?
Okay.
They made their afraid of,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Kasi unang-una, ayaw na mag-offend ng audience kasi doon ang gagaling yung kita.
Yeah.
Pag ka mag-offend ng audience, hindi ka na papanoorin next time, di ba? So parang yun yung mali sa yun yung sa mainstream horror eh. It tends to be, gusto nilang universalize yung experience. Para maraming tao makaka-relate. Pero yun nga, like we said before, to be effective yung Philippine horror, it has to be localized and contextualized.
Yeah,
and you have to go full in talaga.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose we can move on to maybe start wrapping up now, but maybe I want to change like the original question a bit, you know. Well, maybe let's ask it, you know, maybe twofold. Number one, I do want to ask though, like if we're to design like an effective Filipino film right now, you know, maybe for the current milieu, what would it be like, you know, and then maybe after that, you know, why is this a necessary process? Why is it important to scare people, you know, like anyway. So Joker, what do you think? Like, how would you do that? Like maybe your next big project. What would be an effective that's the word I'll use now, an effective horror movie for today's audience? So maybe fantasy muna. Oh, yeah.
Fantasy?
No. I mean, like no. What? No, sorry. No. What I mean is like, if you were to
fantasize
make it, like, yeah, okay. Like with unlimited funds or with all the time in the world, how would you design it? You know?
Sponsorship 7-Eleven, ganun.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, if I were to make a horror film, it has to have no regard at all sa feelings ng audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
No respect. Iyain yung lahat.
Tama. Oh, tapos, yeah.
And, okay, think of the latest or the most recent national issue, national scandal na nangyari sa bansa. Parang, ito ang magaling kila Carlo J. Caparas. Yung mga true crime nila. Yung dati, di ba gumagawa siya ng true crime fiction? Yun ang most effective na horror. Like, Kisapmata. True crime din siya. So, parang, marami tayong wealth of, let's say, domestic violence. Or killings sa mga, di ba ang daming balita ngayon ng patayan, saksakan. Ang dali siyang exploit. And I think I want to make a film na parang talagang alam ng tao. May isang scandal na nangyari na talagang alam ng tao. Tapos parang itatap nila ako na ako gagawa. Parang ako, yun ang pinaka-dream ko na parang we have to make it exploitative as possible. As visceral as possible. And at the same time, let's not make it, huwag natin gawin siyang as literal. Pero gawin natin siyang as abstract. As possible.
Yeah.
Parang, ayun yung perfect formula.
Okay. All right.
If you really want to mess up with the audience, as in scare them, hindi gagana yung tactics of, para sa akin kasi hindi gumagana yung tactics ng, oy, magcast tayo ng Scream Queen like Casino. And, mga love teams like Katniel.
Sila uno pa.
Okay.
Ganda nun eh.
Yeah.
Sa audience. Sa first part, papatay parang scream lang. Pinatay si Drew Barrymore sa unang siya yung pinaka-marketed. Parang feel ko hindi masyado nag-a-admit yung mga Filipino na nanggagaling yung katatakutan sa mismong bahay.
Okay.
Inside their own homes.
Yeah. That's actually what made the KGB as horrifying.
the point
secret
where the
police.
Russians were object of horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ako, ang naisip ko, hindi, ang ano ko lang, I'm feeding on the Joker's standards on film. May naisip ako isang possible idea. I don't know if this would fly. This may be horrifying. But it's a combination of, well, social commentary. Pero, yeah, we know Saw. We know Saw, playing games. But instead of a prison, make it into a slum. Make it into a slum. The antagonist will never be known. So it will never be known. Pero the mystery would be people would
smaller.
Probably people
smaller
would,
circles.
Well, ang ano dyan is people would start disappearing while some would become immediately wealthy.
Oh.
People would start
smaller circles pero mas effective. Mas maganda.
People would start disappearing. Yung kapitbahay mo biglang mawala. Tapos makikita na lang patay. Tapos yung sa kapitbahay mo biglang yumaman, umalis.
Okay, that's a scary
thing. And then the protagonist may eventually receive a message asking him or her to kill someone.
Oh wow!
And then there's the price. So it's a
psychological thriller. Yeah,
it's a breakdown of communal ties, and you can even extend it to a family. That's okay. Yeah, that would be a nice idea. Or very suburban area.
You know, well, that's very interesting. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with space. But for me, I would try and make number one. There's this thing. Alam natin na ang Pilipino ay malinis, mahilig maligo. But in some cases, maybe it's either disease or curse wherein parang kahit gaano ka maligo, parang hindi ka malilinis or something. Like it won't ever be clean. So something like that. Or maybe it could be, it touches on that thing of contamination. That's another form of like horror wherein like maybe yeah, something.
So yun ang title ng film.
Actually, that's a weird thing. Maybe you could make it like parang means that maybe, for example, namatay yung isang relative, maybe kuya mo, tito mo, tapos parang pwede mo suotin yung dati niyang damit, tapos parang okay din, parang it's a suit. Yun pala, either may putok o parang it is rotting at your, it has a rotting disease. That's how he died. So parang, shit. In other words, that hand-me-down is a generation, it's like a cultural thing, no? Na parang, okay to
Or,
like, it's a nice suit. And
or,
then,
or in an Edgar Allan Poe way, you would rot instead of the body of your dead relative.
But it's more like Oscar Wilde's like Dorian Gray, no? Instead of there's a portrait, yeah.
Meron kasi meron short stories yan. May short stories yan na si Edgar Allan Poe on hypnotism. You had yung short story ni Edgar Allan Poe. One person wanted to experiment on hypnotism. They would stop someone from dying through hypnosis. So they did that, but the corpse started muttering, "Let me die, let me die." But they kept on suspending his animation. So yun lang, the corpse is there. It lasted, I think, for days. Pero hindi nagsasalita yung corpse. The voice is just coming out of the corpse to just to wake me up and let me die. Yun ang laging labas. So eventually, they woke him up and the corpse just immediately rotted right in front of them.
Shit.
Yeah, that's what kept me up.
I felt like there might be a similar story in Black Mirror or something. I'll try to remember it. But yeah, I know Black Mirror for a time was really scary. For a contemporary audience. Like if you watch like White Christmas, it's literally being canceled or blocked by everyone in society. That's actually scary. Or what's my favorite episode is the entire history of you, where you can actually see the history of your wife that's cheating on you. And that's the weird thing. It traps you in that looking at footage. So yeah, that's another thing. I also, well, and the other thing I want to try and explore is try to make yung perya scary. Like, ang daming, well, it's a theme in the West, but alam mo yung parang haunted house or something that, or that, what do you call that? Like,
di ba dapat making the perya scarier?
Yeah, it's oh my god,
scary
that's
enough. Scary enough.
Wait,
I agree. Yeah.
Well, actually, well, yeah, that's true, but no, like undeniably scary because sometimes you go there and it's like it's people in costumes. It's like something just carnies, but like what makes it like really like your life is in danger. You know what I mean? Like a sense of danger, and I think that people should explore that. Hanggang ngayon may mga perya pa rin, pero parang pwede siya maging nakakatakot. It's a good theme for something. I don't know, parang nawala din yung Magandang Gabi, Bayan. I'm not sure why we don't. I haven't watched TV in a long time, but I remember watching episodes of that. Sinoli de Castro, former vice president. My goodness.
Magandang
Gabi. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Maybe anyway.
Siguro yung pinakamasayang customer ng perya, kailangan siya isakripisyo sa roller coaster.
Yun pala yun. Okay. So,
I'm actually scared of Star City.
Okay. Actually,
I mean, alam mo yung nasunog siya?
Yeah.
Ano siya scared fascination. Talagang alala na fascination ko sa Star City. Yung mga bootleg rides niya. Yung mga bootleg Disney characters. It's very, ano yung term? Ang eerie niya.
Yeah. Or sometimes like a scary, like badly misshapen Shrek or something. Or Mickey Mouse.
Mga yun.
Yeah. What if they were alive, no? Or, yeah.
May sense of rot. May sense of
degradation.
I forgot the word.
May sense of rot.
Isipin ko yun.
Depreciation.
May adjective ako lalo na ano eh.
Dilapidation.
Na bootleg. What's the synonym of bootleg?
Bootleg.
Imitation.
Imitate. We can say bootleg. I mean, people know what you're talking about. Wow, pastiche. Okay. But yeah, I think people know that the fake statues. Actually, hanggang ngayon yung mga santo nakakatakot pa rin eh. Yeah. So, and the fact that they're usually
they're meant to intimidate.
They're meant to. What do you mean?
Yeah,
like
yung mga
purposefully.
Santo. Yeah. I think that those were meant to intimidate.
I suppose that leads us to the final question, which is why is it important and what scares us? Well, it helps us cope with things that don't really make sense or things that we don't understand. Maybe we make a story out of it, and therefore it's therapeutic. Well, yeah. So, and these things that I suppose it's for entertainment, but really it's to make sense of things that we are struggling with and make it something that when you're done. Actually, it's a weird thing about some horror films. I don't know if you rewatch them, but when you're done, they're not quite scary, but you're just there to vibe with it. Oh, that's nice. So that's well done. But it's craftsmanship. But the sensations. Actually, a lot of things with horror is that it's at its scariest when it's novel. When you're expecting it, it's rare that you're scared anymore, surprised. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Why is it important to have horror film? Why is the horror genre important?
It's a Joker. Why do you need to scare people?
Yeah.
Because it's fun.
Because it's fun. Thank you guys, mga P.
It's more fulfilling. It's more fulfilling to mess with other people.
Okay.
Basta paano ba? Ano need siya talaga eh. We need some spooky people. We need some spooky shit to scare us in the dark. Yeah. Otherwise, will be insane.
True. And we eventually
Ouch.
become stronger people, like dati
Yeah.
takutin si Joker. Ako rin takutin din ako. Tapos yun, parang wala na. So, you're able to like become more, again, resilient in front of the real world, maybe. And yeah. Ano,
Yeah.
Borge, do you think why do you think the horror genre is important?
Is it important? Well, I would say it is. I would say it is important. Why is it important? Why would it remain important? I think the horror genre is, well, I think it became two things at this point. It allows us to settle our dues with the uncertain, with the unknown, may it be by technology, by the mysterious or whatnot. Pero yeah, linking with that one, I think another purpose, what makes horror genre important is it keeps us attached to the mystical, to the mysticism that is, repressed and suppressed, pero it comes out one way or another. Yeah, it keeps us grounded on that. And that we're still fascinated, even if it's the horrifying version of fascination. It keeps us surprised, keeps us. But then again, ang problema ko dyan is if horror becomes too commercialized, that it becomes a substitute for confronting actually scary things that are more subtle.
Right.
That's my problem with that. But if the film itself, if the product, may be a novel or a film or even a piece of music, if it's just authentically there to horrify you, scare the living shit out of you, then yeah, that would be an authentic means to tie ourselves with the mystical, with the unknown.
Yep.
Okay. Any parting words, at least to our listeners, on this, to remark on this genre and scaring us in Halloween? Yeah, Joker.
Major way to scare yourself.
Okay. Okay, I suppose that's it, Borge.
Yeah, treasure your fears.
Treasure your fears. Treasure your fears. Okay, well, yeah. Well, I think we can elaborate on that because as we now move on to recommendations, where we talk about scary stories or related literature that can continue to scare us and maybe make us stronger people, or explore again how we can maybe, for filmmakers out there or film fans, to look for what scares us, further. I suppose, and as part of our ongoing partnership with the Ateneo Press, of course, we recommend a few books that related to the topic today. One of them is Translating Time by Bliss, who talks about a few Asian horror films here, and yeah, talks about maybe a lot of alternative films, and it's quite academic. It talks about the temporalities of transnational reception and weaving a lot of common things that scare us in Asian cinema and not just Philippine cinema. So you can get that in the Ateneo Press, in Shopee and Lazada. Another one is Magandang Gabi, Bayan: Nation, Journalism, Discourse, and Television News in the Philippines. It's not necessarily about horror per se. It shares the same title as the show of Vice President Noli de Castro, but this also talks about behind the scenes politics of journalism, news, and and on that same show, and perhaps insight as to how news is produced. And in some ways, sometimes news is enough to scare us. So yeah, check that out. It's one of the more interesting titles in the Ateneo Press. And if you want to get these at a discount price, use the discount code ATENPIPOD. That's ATENPIPOD, ATENPIPOD, for a discount on your next purchase from the Ateneo Press at Shopee. And we'll check, but they're also available in Lazada. I do have maybe two quick recommendations. which are really good. One is really good. The other one is bad in interesting ways. Number one is the Netflix series Dahmer, which actually, well, there have been a lot of depictions of Dahmer's life and crimes. Jeffrey Dahmer is, of course, the serial killer who tried to tried to create zombies and tried to drill holes into people's heads. And we all know the story. There are quite a lot. But this one talks about the social effects of his murders, what it did to the community, particularly the people of color, how it made them feel unsafe because of being neglected by police authorities, and eventually up to this day, how they have not fully healed. And so it also has that's an interesting title. There are social costs of serial killers. So it depicts that. It doesn't. Well, it also has a touching story of Dahmer himself and his family, but also focuses on the victims. So it's interesting. The other one is ML, starring Eddie Garcia and Tony Labrusca, and it was a feature in the 2018 Cinemalaya. Now, it's special to me because it actually features, my own subdivision. I watched the film to find out, but don't look for my house. But it's funny thing because it actually made me realize that, it's our subdivision can be so quiet. It can actually be used as the headquarters for a torture scene. Like, of course, Eddie Garcia, great actor, late and great actor, actually plays a retired colonel who was in charge of torturing communists and activists during martial law. And of course, he tortures Tony Labrusca, and his friends. And what's funny is that it's actually a good premise, but they're actually, I don't know, they're perhaps the weaknesses are in production. The shots are somehow a little bit too long. You know what I'm saying? It could be a much shorter film, and it focuses a lot on like gore, but it does have an interesting, how you say, commentary on martial law and how horrific it is, because they ask themselves, why are you doing this? And it's like, and he doesn't really answer. He tries to interrogate them, but there are no correct answers. They're not communists. They ask, where's your headquarters? And nothing they can say can really stop him. So I suppose that it's the same with victims in martial law. Of course, it's not a nuanced picture, but it is, in a way, naked violence and shows the horrors of that time and translated here. I suppose it's political in that it scares today's youth into believing in martial law. But it's not perfect, but it is, again, bad in interesting ways. So yeah, maybe Borge, we should discuss that. I actually call it civic horror. With it's a horror that has a lot of civic implications. So Borge, do you have any recommendations for this horror-filled podcast?
Well, 3 recommendations, very quick ones. First, Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, okay.
I think that's one of the more contemporary, yet one of the finest body horrors that's there. So anyway, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, it's far scarier than Human Centipede. But it's just scary shit.
Okay.
The other one is just read Crossed. I already mentioned it earlier on. Right. I would no longer say more. But yeah, read it. It's a graphic novel. I think it's available online if you can find it.
Okay.
Last, go back to the classics. Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. So yeah, I think that's that. I will settle with that one. If you want to scare the living daylights out of yourselves.
And last, we have our guest, Joker. Any recommendations as to how people can scare themselves this Halloween?
Basahin niyo yung Reportage on Crime ni Nick Joaquin.
Reportage on Crime. Okay. Yeah. Actually, I have a copy of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's parang it's a wealth of true crime reportages, and sometimes they can be really scary. And it's a wealth of resources. Kung gusto nyo gumawa ng effective horror, I think nasa true crime siya. Filipino true crime.
Okay.
And the other one, read Eos and Thanatos, Tony Perez.
So
Cubao
again?
Horror, man.
Oh,
Eos
Cubao
and
Horror.
Thanatos ni Tony Perez.
Eros
Actually,
and Thanatos. Yeah.
Any book ni Tony Perez about Cubao.
Oh.
Di
So
ko siya
Cubao is scary,
nasabi
yeah?
Di ko siya nasabi kanina, pero I want to make a horror film about Cubao. I think it's the most fantastic place in the Philippines. Cubao.
Well, not just for drinking, but also horror.
Expired.
Or Cubao Expo. And I don't know. I think we'll think about it. We'll workshop it. But yeah, that's an interesting idea. Because when it gets dark and maybe there's no, even amongst the crowd, you can get lost in there. And you can commit crimes there, man. And get away with it.
I mean,
anyway,
I've committed and I've been committed.
Oh wow, okay. That's an interesting idea. Actually, it's weird. We have a lot of possible ideas for horror stories and films.
Cubao.
So Cubao, okay.
Cubao siya. As in, promise Cubao, pinaka-nakakatakot ng lugar. Ang pinaka-fantastic ng lugar.
Yeah, I think when I commented earlier on about the nooks and crannies of our city, I think I was thinking of Cubao.
It is a scary place, especially when people randomly say "Psst, uy," or something like "uy, pogi." Yun pala parang pimps. They're just pimps or yung mga streetwalkers. But yeah, or sometimes you can still get robbed and mugged there. So it is creepy. Yeah. Whew. Oh, okay. So that is
Cubao.
Cubao. Yeah. So that's actually a very, very substantial and very interesting discussion. Thank you, Joker, for joining us, and hope to have you again. Do you want to promote anything while you have the chance? Maybe where can they find your work?
Search nyo yung blog ko, Cinesensual. I think an audience of you already knows that blog. I hope you know that.
Anyway, I only read some of your blog, yeah.
I also write under CNN Philippines Live, mga film reviews, contributing writer ako. So, actually, wala pa akong pending article.
Okay.
I'll try to write about Q Cinema.
Okay.
Yung shorts.
I suppose we should all recommend to go to Q Cinema because it's a great,
go to Q Cinema.
It's a great festival.
And my films, watch my films. Available naman siya sa YouTube.
Okay. We'll get the link to those.
Yep.
Yeah. Or maybe.
Yeah.
Ayun. So, Burge, watch my film.
I will.
I think you'll remember it for a quite while.
Oh, yeah.
My film. I think
they'll
definitely yata naalala pa.
Hell yeah, they burned into my memory and they're quite graphic, so that is precisely why I invited him. He's quite talented actually. So yeah, I hope you have more movies to come and more discourse about it. Keep writing, keep making films. Great.
We'll have you here again soon.
Hopefully. Yeah, soon. Yes. So the PI pod, So the PI podcast is available on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. If you want to send us a message, either with a question or a suggestion for an episode, please send us an email at pipodcastph@gmail.com. You may also message us on Facebook in our page, all of which are linked at the description below. But until the next episode,
Magandang gabi, mga ka-PI.